It begins the same way it always does. I'm staring at the ceiling, the oppressive weight of the darkness pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. My mind feels trapped in an endless loop, thoughts spiraling and folding back onto themselves. I tell myself to relax. It's just insomnia. Sleep will come eventually. It has to. The clock ticks louder than it should, each mechanical click slicing through the silence like a knife. I don't need to glance at it to know how late it is, but I do anyway. 2:17 a.m. The numbers glare accusingly from the nightstand, mocking my exhaustion. I roll over, dragging the covers with me, and squeeze my eyes shut. My body aches for rest, but my brain refuses to quiet. Did I lock the front door? No, I did that before bed. But what if I didn't? I almost throw off the blanket to check but catch myself. This is just anxiety playing its usual tricks. Something about the room feels off. The stillness isn't peaceful. It's heavy, unnatural. I try to focus on my breathing, hoping the rhythm will lull me into calmness. But it only amplifies the eerie quiet. It's as though the air itself is alive, watching, waiting. I shift onto my other side, turning my back to the door. My eyes burn with fatigue. Yet no matter how I adjust, nothing feels right. The mattress seems uneven, too firm, too soft, somehow both at once. My pillow smells faintly of fabric softener, the scent oddly jarring instead of comforting. I fluff it, punch it into shape, but it doesn't help. It's like I'm lying on someone else's bed, not mine. Another glance at the clock. 2:23. 6 minutes have passed, though it feels like hours, or maybe seconds. Time stretches and contracts unpredictably, slipping out of reach. I turn back, toward the door. The room looks unchanged, shadows pooling in familiar corners. But tonight, there's an unsettling edge to it. It feels foreign, as though I've intruded into a space that doesn't belong to me. My throat tightens as I scan the area. Everything is where it should be. The dresser, the clothes draped over the chair, my phone resting dark and silent on the nightstand. I consider reaching for it, scrolling through something mindless to distract myself. But the idea feels wrong somehow. Turning on the screen would shatter whatever fragile illusion of safety I've managed to cling to. I flip onto my stomach, burying my face in the pillow. The darkness behind my eyelids feels heavier than the one in the room, thick and suffocating, as though invisible hands are pressing down on me. Gasping for air, I turn my head to the side and freeze. A faint creak cuts through the silence, barely audible, but unmistakable. My heart pounds wildly as I strain to listen. The sound doesn't repeat, but the air around me shifts, prickling against my skin. I glance toward the door again. It's closed, just as it always is. The house is silent. It's nothing, I whisper to myself. Just the old floorboards settling, reacting to the drop in temperature. But the reassurance rings hollow. I roll onto my back, staring up at the ceiling. The ticking of the clock grows louder, almost reverberating through the room. My chest feels constricted, my limbs leaden. I attempt to regulate my breathing. In, hold, out, but lose count after 20. My thoughts spiral again, pulling me deeper into frustration. Why can't I let go? Sleep should be simple. Close your eyes, drift away. So why does it feel impossible? Suddenly, the air turns colder. The blanket offers no comfort now, the chill seeping into my bones. I pull it tighter, but the cold lingers, sharp and unyielding. My gaze drifts to the window. The curtains are drawn, but a thin sliver of moonlight sneaks through the gap, painting a pale stripe across the carpet. Harmless, yet something about it unsettles me. I can't explain why. It's just light. I shift again, rolling onto my side, and close my eyes once more. My breathing becomes shallow, each exhale catching in my throat. My heartbeat thunders in my ears, competing with the relentless ticking of the clock. I try to focus on the rhythm, counting each beat, but it's useless. Then I hear it, a faint whisper, so low it barely registers. My eyes snap open, my pulse racing. It vanishes as quickly as it came, leaving only silence in its wake. I tell myself it was imagined, but my body betrays me. My muscles tense, goosebumps rising along my arms. I lie frozen, straining to hear it again. The silence feels too dense, too alive. My hand trembles as I reach for the lamp on the nightstand. Light will fix this. It always does. But just as my fingers brush the switch, something primal inside me screams to stop. Don't turn it on. Don't make it worse. My hand falls limply back to the mattress. The whisper returns, clearer this time. My stomach churns. It's not words, not exactly. Just sound. Air moving unnaturally, as though stirred by unseen forces. It's coming from the far corner of the room, where the shadows gather thickest. I can't see anything, but I can feel it. Something is there, watching, waiting. It's nothing, I mutter aloud. Anxiety, sleep deprivation, they warp reality, conjure things that aren't real. I shut my eyes tightly, willing myself to believe it, but the sound grows louder, closer. My throat goes dry. I want to scream, to call out, to do something. But my voice is trapped, buried beneath layers of paralyzing fear. I sink deeper into the mattress, clutching the blanket like a shield. The whispering moves, circling the room. I don't want to look. I don't want to know. But I can't stop myself. Slowly, I turn my head toward the corner. My eyes adjust to the darkness, picking out the familiar shapes of furniture. The chair, the dresser, the outline of the door, nothing is there. Nothing ever is. Yet the feeling persists. If I stare long enough, I'll see it. Something I desperately don't want to see. The whispering stops. My ears ring in the sudden silence. My heart hammers painfully in my chest. I force myself to breathe, slow and deliberate. The air tastes strange now, metallic and acrid. It's fine, I whisper. It's over, but deep down, I know better. A weight settles on the edge of the bed. My body stiffens, every instinct screaming at me to run. But I'm frozen in place. I can feel it pressing down on the mattress, tugging the blanket tighter around me. My breath catches in my throat. I don't want to look. I don't want to confirm what I already suspect. The weight shifts, drawing nearer. The blanket slides imperceptibly, but enough to send a jolt of terror coursing through me. I clutch it tighter, my knuckles white. My chest feels crushed, my lungs refusing to cooperate. The air around me feels wrong, thick, viscous, like I'm drowning. And then I hear it, a breath, soft and slow, brushing against my ear. Every muscle in my body locks up, frozen in place. I can't think, can't move, can't breathe. The sound lingers, warm and damp against my skin. I squeeze my eyes shut, praying for it to end, for dawn to break, for salvation from this nightmare. But the darkness holds firm. The breath remains, steady and unrelenting, as the clock ticks louder and louder, marking each agonizing second. And in that moment, I know I'll never fall asleep again. Now let's see next story. I believe, now that I have made it to adulthood, that I was given a key too soon. I was in 3rd grade when my dad got a job at Mazar Fiber Optics. He would be working from 2 till 11, making more money than he had ever made before. But there was a catch. Dad had always worked from 6 to 2, which meant he would get home before 3 so he could get me off the bus. Mom had a typical 9 to 5, something she couldn't change. And that left 2 hours where I would be unattended. 2 hours didn't seem that long though. And the money was so much better than what he had made at the phone company. So they decided to give me some trust. I wasn't a kid who lacked responsibility, and I didn't usually have trouble following rules. So they decided I was old enough to be trusted to let myself in and lock the door behind me. Just let yourself in, make a snack, do your homework, and don't answer the door or the phone if someone comes around or calls. Can you do that? I nodded, thinking it sounded exciting, and so I became a latchkey kid. It went pretty well for a while. I would come home, make some Nesquik and bagel bites, do my homework, and then go watch cartoons until Mom came home and started dinner. It was a good system, until I came home to find something was different. I came home from school, worrying about the math homework in my bag, when I found that the door was unlocked. I put my key in, meaning to turn it so I could get inside, but the door just pushed open as it creaked into the quiet house. I felt a little chill run up me. The door was never unlocked. My parents were meticulous about locking it, always had been. And as I looked into the seemingly empty house, I felt sure that I didn't want to go in there. Go inside, make a snack, do your homework, and watch some TV until I get home. That was my mother's voice echoing in my head, and it moved me past the wall of fear that was building in me. I went inside, closed and locked the door, and went to the kitchen for my snack. I had lived in this house my whole life, and in that whole time, I had never felt unsafe there. It was my home. You're supposed to feel safe in your home. But as I walked through the living room and toward the kitchen, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was that feeling I felt sometimes when I got up to use the bathroom. In the middle of the night, the feeling of monsters watching you. But it was the first time I had felt it in the daytime. Something was watching me. Something unfriendly. And as I moved into the kitchen, I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. It was gone when I looked, but I was pretty sure it had been there. I shrugged it off at the time though and went to get my chocolate milk and chips. I was scared, but I was also 8. When you're 8, it isn't uncommon to jump at shadows or think there might be ghosts or something. You know it can't be real, but that doesn't stop it from making you scared. I took the powder out of the cabinet, took the milk out of the fridge, and spooned powder into my glass as I prepared to mix it. I had the milk up, ready to pour, when I saw something reflected in the side of the glass. It wasn't exactly the reflection of a person, but as the milk slowly splashed into the cup, I saw something lumpy and ill-defined peeking at me from the door to the kitchen. I couldn't tell what it was, and when the milk spilled over the rim and onto the countertop, I almost dropped the jug. I managed to get the paper towels before the milk spilled onto the floor, but when I peeked at the door, no one was there. Put my chips in a bowl and got my homework out of my backpack as I went to sit at the dinner table. Unlike usual, I sat with my back to the door out to the backyard. If there was something here, something I was becoming pretty sure there was, I wanted to be able to run if the time came. As I bent over my work, I kept seeing something peek around the edge of the kitchen door. It was always gone when I looked, up, but not quite. It was like catching a kid peeking around a corner who pulled his head back a little too slowly. And I almost imagined I could hear whoever it was giggle as I almost saw him. My teeth were chattering, and I'll never know how I stopped myself from crying. But I somehow kept my cool as I worked through my math homework. It was the most scared I had ever been in my entire life. Even more than the time I had snuck into the living room to watch scary movies, and I was having trouble finishing my math. Who could focus on fractions when something was in your house, watching you? I was just scribbling now, barely paying attention to what I was writing. I was more interested in trying to see this thing that was stalking me. I couldn't catch more than glimpses, but it was bald and looked fat. It had no neck, its head and shoulders simply mounts of fat. But it was the eyes and mouth that scared me the most. Its eyes were little more than dark, piggy circles. There was no white to them. They looked like doll's eyes as they stared at me, and the mouth was drawn up in a grin. The lips were wet, the teeth so shiny that the thing must be running its tongue over them constantly. The eyes Despite having no real color other than black, looked hungry, and the mouth was like that of the wolf in one of my cartoons. He was another big bad wolf just looking for a pig to gobble up, and I was the one he had found at home. I might not know what these fractions meant, but I had figured out one thing. I had figured out that I had to get out of there. Whatever it wasn't a monster or a boogeyman. That thing was human, and the longer I sat here, the more I could smell it. It was giving off a smell like my Uncle Tom did at Christmas sometimes. It smelled sweet and sour and a lot like old sweat. Something I would later learn was skin expelling, liquor. As a kid, I just knew it smelled bad, and I wanted to get away before it decided to gobble me up. I thought and thought, trying to find some reason why I would need to go outside. And then I saw the trash. It was full. The empty biscuit cans sitting on top like an old snake skin. And that's when I got the idea. The garbage was one of my chores, as long as there wasn't any glass in it. So after cleaning up my homework, I went to the can and started taking the bag out so I could take it outside. I headed for the back door, knowing it was watching me. And when I opened the back door, I heard it. Heavy footsteps running after me. I slammed the back door and dropped the bag, running for the fence that separated the front and backyard. I heard it hit the door, heard it trip over the bag, and heard it fall on the back porch. But I was already around the house and heading for the neighbor's house. If it had been any other day, I would have kept running, looking for someone who was home. But I saw the Staub's car in the driveway and knew they were home. I heard the gate open and close, but I was already hammering on my neighbor's door. I heard someone drop something in the kitchen, heard Mrs. Staub's come hurrying from the kitchen, and out of the corner of my eye, I could see the thing coming around my house and toward the neighbor's house. I pounded even harder, wrenching at the knob. And when Mrs. Staub opened the door, I shot inside and yelled for her to close the door because something was after me. She looked up, and she must have seen something because she slammed and locked the door. Then she called the police, and after that, she called my mom. The police beat Mom home, but only just. I told Mom what I had seen, told her something had been stalking me in the house, and how the door had been unlocked when I got home. She reassured me that it was fine, that it was probably nothing. She said it was probably just my mind playing tricks on me. But Mrs. Staub told her that nothing had been playing tricks on her mind, and she had seen it too. It was a fat, naked man who tried to come right up my porch steps, and I'll testify to that before the throne of God. Mom was very confused, and what the police discovered didn't help matters much. They found a large man, one with very little neck, hiding in my closet as if he just expected me to come back after he had chased me out of the house. They didn't find any ID on him for obvious reasons, but they found his clothes folded neatly in the backyard underneath my mother's rose bushes. Mom told me later that he had a record of doing stuff with kids, but that this was the first time he had escalated into anything like this. I'm thankful that they got him before he could actually hurt a child, but he was responsible for the scariest day of my life. After that, my mom asked my aunt to come meet me at the house when I got off the bus and to sit with me until she got home. That kept on until I was in middle school, and Mom decided I could probably look after myself again. I still think about that day a lot, and it's probably why I kept my kids in after-school care for as long as I did. Now let's see next story. Last night, I came face to face with something that still haunts me. My partner, Rachel, and I were driving home from my grandmother's memorial service in another state. The GPS promised a 9-hour trip, faster than the route we'd taken, to get there. And since neither of us had driven it before, we decided to give it a shot. The first 3 hours passed uneventfully. Smooth highways, cruise control set, and nothing but open road ahead. But then Rachel announced she needed to use the restroom. And honestly, so did I. I pulled up the nearest gas station on my phone. It would only add 10 minutes to our journey. As we approached the exit, the sky burned crimson. Not quite sunset yet, but close enough to cast an eerie glow over everything. A mile out, I began to regret my decision. The smooth asphalt gave way to crumbling pavement, riddled with potholes and patched up sections that looked like they'd been fixed by someone who didn't care much about quality. Rachel shot me a look, silently urging me to hurry. The landscape grew desolate. Rusty signs peppered with bullet holes lined the road, and pine trees stood tall against the horizon, their shadows stretching long across fields littered with dead deer. Finally, the gas station appeared. A small, weathered building that somehow seemed less grimy than I'd expected. It wasn't exactly welcoming, but at least it didn't look like a health hazard. I started pumping gas while Rachel dashed inside. "At least this won't take long," I muttered under my breath, keeping one eye on her as she disappeared behind a rack of snacks. The pump sputtered slowly, but we didn't need much fuel. By the time I finished, we'd have plenty to get us home. But Rachel didn't come back. Minutes ticked by, and irritation crept in. I checked my phone. 5:45 p.m. The sun was sinking fast, and worse, I had no cell service. Still, I told myself not to panic. Maybe she was just browsing or chatting with the cashier. Leaving the pump running, I headed inside after her. The interior was eerily quiet. Empty shelves, flickering fluorescent lights, and no sign of life. Not even an attendant behind the counter. "Rachel!" I called out, my voice echoing through the deserted space. No answer. Irritation quickly morphed into unease. I rushed to the women's restroom and flung the door open. Empty. The room reeked of neglect. Streaked mirrors and stained sinks telling stories of months without proper cleaning. Panic bubbled up in my chest. I scanned the windows. Our car was still parked outside, but there was no trace of Rachel. Desperation clawed at me as I turned toward the men's restroom. I slammed into the door, shoulder throbbing when it refused to budge. "Damn it!" I yelled, pounding on the wood with my other arm. "Rachel, are you in there?" A toilet flushed. Was she ignoring me? Or... The lock clicked, and the door creaked open. Out stepped a hulking figure. A man easily 6'5", his black hair disheveled, a jagged scar slicing across his cheek. His belt buckle jangled as he adjusted it, and the stench rolling off him hit me like a wall. "This is a public place, kid." "Shut the hell up," he growled, shoving past me and heading for the exit. My blood ran cold. That face, that monstrous, unforgettable face, burned itself into my memory. Trembling, I kicked open the bathroom stall doors. One glance was all it took. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat. There was no point checking for a pulse. She was gone. Something snapped inside me. Rage surged where fear had been moments earlier. I bolted out of the store, scanning the area frantically. Nothing. No cars speeding away. No towering brute lurking nearby. Just the fading light of dusk and the chirping of crickets. It took 5 agonizing minutes to reach the highway and regain cell service. I called the police, recounting every detail. The scarred man, the empty station, the horrifying discovery. They listened, skeptical, but professional. For now, they hadn't arrested me, though I could tell they weren't ruling me out as a suspect. Today, I bought a gun. Tomorrow, I'm going back. I don't know what I'll find, or if I'll survive, but I can't let this go. That scarred face may not belong to the devil himself, but what I saw in that bathroom was pure evil, and I won't rest until I confront it again.